Hi, my name is Michael Wilson, and this is my one audience member. So imagine you wake up to hear that the nuclear power plant located in Indian Point, New York, had an explosion occur from a terrorist plot to destroy the nuclear reactors. This nuclear power plant is just 50 miles from 8.5 million Americans living in New York City. Depending on wind direction and weather patterns, this could cause a mass evacuation of the largest populated city in the United States. Just like the Chernobyl accident, this could cause an exclusion zone of 20 miles or more that would be unlivable. When Chernobyl took place, Sweden, which is actually 683 miles away, was alerted of radiation in their atmosphere. As you can see on my delivery aid here, Chernobyl sits in the deepest part where the radiation actually took place, and it's right there in Belarus in Ukraine. Now, because of the weather patterns, you can see how it blew a lot of the radiation away from the east. So the radiation actually stretched as far north as Sweden and Norway, as far west as Portugal, and as far south as Turkey. Now in the smaller delivery aid I have over here on the right side of the screen, it says the calcium deposition. Now this is actually a metal that is not normally radioactive, but when it's in these power plants, it gets highly radioactive. So you can see Pripyat, which is the city by Chernobyl, it is right there in the deepest red for that, where the radiation would have been so strong. And you can see the exclusion zone where you still can't go today without wearing a ton of radiation protectant suits, and you can only be in there for so long. But the need for more energy for human use is overwhelming, leading to new practices and methods to obtain the energy needed to sustain our growing world population. The world right now, their population is growing at 1.05%, with 7.58 billion humans on Earth. Hydraulic fracking or fracturing, if I can get my delivery aid to move here, there we go, is the process of gas drilling used in present-day natural gas industry to retrieve more oil than would normally be possible. So essentially they shoot millions of gallons of water mixed with some sand and toxic chemicals down a drilled well, and this is then put under pressure in underground rock formations to crack them open to loosen the additional gas, which can then be extracted. Another one of my delivery aids here, you can see how the whole fracking site would look and how the well goes pretty far down into where the rock formations are to crack open and fracture them to then extract this natural shale gas. So, being a forestry student, I'm always looking at how we as humans use our natural resources and the effects it actually has on us as individuals, as well as our land, water, air, and wildlife. So I spent hours reading through the research on fracking, and there seems to be just as many people for it as against it. But it definitely seems to be a hot topic today, with a lot of people having very strong views on it. So what I feel, though, is that hydraulic fracturing is actually going to help push us to be an energy economy that relies on efficiency and renewable resources and low-carbon fossil fuels. So American energy needs fall on a lot of other countries, and that's one thing that I'm going to talk about. We're also going to talk about how the early success of fracking has turned out, and also why fracking is safer and actually cheaper than nuclear power, which is what we use a lot now to get our energy. So on the subject of America relying heavily on other countries for our oil to actually run our country, the United States imports around 60% of their oil from other countries. So, you might not think this is a problem, but it could be. Because just like during the 1973 Arab-Israel War, Arab members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, which is actually OPEC, imposed this embargo act against the United States in retaliation for the U.S. decision to resupply the Israeli military and for them to gain leverage in the post-war peace negotiations. So, with the current president today of the United States and his relations with other countries souring, it isn't, far-fetched to believe that we could, some point in our lifetime, see this retaliation again from other countries in the future, where we would get cut off then from the oil supply. So with hydraulic fracturing, it wouldn't just make America more self-sufficient so that we could take care of ourselves with our oil needs, but it would also be cheaper and safer than the nuclear power plants we use today. So nuclear power plants pose a huge risk for civilians and workers. With the well-known accidents of Chernobyl in Russia and the 3 Mile Island accident in Pennsylvania. These accidents can make a whole city uninhabitable, like Chernobyl, for up to like 20,000 years. As you can see in this picture, this is actually Pripyat, which I did talk about earlier when I used my first delivery aid, which was right there where the Cassium was terrible because it blew out of the reactors, that metal that is highly radioactive when it's actually in these nuclear power plants. So, it could just decimate these massive cities. I mean, could you imagine? I'm not saying that, this would necessarily, if this happened, would stretch all the way to New York to this extent, where it would be in an exclusion zone. But, just seeing these eerie ghost towns left behind that were once populated so heavily, it's just crazy. But the low price from gas obtained from fracking is actually 4 to 5 cents a kilowatt an hour. Now, the nuclear power plant's current production is 9 cents a kilowatt hour. And the nuclear power plants actually take a lot to get them up and running price-wise and to keep them running. So it's actually a $4.3 million refurbishment cost on these nuclear power plants, which makes nuclear much more expensive than what fracking would be. Now, mining for the enrichment of the uranium is not very safe for the environment at all. I mean, these open pit mines leave behind radioactive particles that cause erosion and even pollute nearby sources of water. So, the uranium supply is going to run out. It's not just there forever. It's not a renewable resource, and eventually it will be gone. So the nuclear power plants then would have to figure something else out because they need that uranium to keep going. But yeah, so with the fracking already taking place in some places in America, we can now look and see how has fracking done compared nuclear power, and what are the advantages we have seen. Well, so far with fracking, the oil and gas industry has actually employed in 2013 1.7 million jobs, I believe, through fracking. And they're hoping that by 2035, they will have 3.5 million jobs. So, fracking is not only increasing the supply of natural gas by 65% for the country, but it's also, our unemployment is going down because, these people are getting jobs in the fracking industry. And fracking right now is actually saving us $180 billion a year just on gasoline. So when you add in the savings of diesel, jet fuel, heating oil, and the 27.5, I believe, trillion cubic feet of natural gas that we used just last year, and fracking is easily saving Americans several $100 billion a year on their energy costs. Gas bills have dropped $13 billion per year from 2007 to 2013 as a result of the increase in fracking. So, fracking natural gas actually burns more cleanly than coal and oil. So the net result is less carbon and other particulates, polluting the air by replacing the coal with gas. America has actually led the way in the world in reducing carbon pollution. And that's why they're implementing so much of this fracking going on. Fracking will not only give our economy this huge boost, but it's also going to help us with our future energy needs that are going to take place here in America. Computer's dying. With the tensions around the world from countries against the U.S., we must set ourselves up from the possibility of being cut off from the oil supply, because that would pretty much leave us high and dry. We would have very little oil with our growing population, and that could spell big trouble for us. And our nuclear power plants, they're so costly, and they pose that risk. At any time, a terrorist fly a plane into a nuclear reactor, and it would just cause, we're already seeing how the coronavirus pandemic is playing out, in something like this, you could also see, especially if a few of them were targeted at once, that radiation that would then build across America would be, astronomical and have major consequences. But fracking gives us a much faster way also to extract natural gas from the shale rock, and that can make us self-sufficient, and it's going to cost less, and it's lower risk than the nuclear power plant. So therefore, I feel like we need to stop this hate and this war that is going on fracking. Like all things, fracking does still have its risks, but I do believe that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages when it comes to fracking for the American growing economy and our energy needs. It will buy us more time to really become that renewable, free source energy, sustainable country that uses totally inexhaustible, resources that don't even pollute at all. And the energy won't emit any greenhouse gases when it's producing electricity. So this is a call to action for everyone, really, to become more informed on the ways in which we acquire and produce energy for our country, so we can start taking the steps for being a safer alternative, and one that will, ultimately help our country by putting it on the right track to become a cleaner and more self-sufficient country. You can actually visit a ton of sites. All you have to do is type in fracking, and so many different things will come up. Just read through them and get informed, and stay up to date on everything that's going on with it. But thank you for your time, and have a good one.